My name is Mark McCollum. I have a small practice, mostly residential architecture. I've been on my own for about 15 years. Before that, I worked for a man named Max Levy. Before that, for Frank Welch. I've been practicing architecture and making things really all my life. This house has a little bit of an interesting story in that it's a renovation, so we had a certain footprint, a certain envelope to work with. Outside it was great. Inside it was just awful. The plan seemed to just go on and on with no guiding principle. So my first job really was to just clean things up, clarify the plan, how the spaces work together. And so we had a lot to work with because it's a big house. And in some ways that was an asset, in some ways it was a problem. Because I was like, well, what do we do with all these things? In the end, it worked out great. We have a great client. They really wanted to have a great house, and they worked at it. I worked at it. They kept pushing me. Really ideal project. I'd say the concept of the project for me, I'll back up and say, really for all my work, I want things to be really quiet and generous. I think that's how you get to beautiful. And I want beautiful. I think beauty is important. It's important to our souls. So a lot of what I do is just, I work hard to get things to come together the way they feel natural, they feel right. Even though it may take a lot of work to get there, it's not about itself, it's not fussy, it's just natural. And that gives us a place to be calm. It gives us space for our bodies to move, it gives us a place for us to relax, it gives us a place to observe nature. Sometimes just the sun falling on the plaster wall, or the feel of the door when you open the front door. It's a heavy door, but you want that feel, you know? And so all those kinds of things come together. Like I said earlier, architecture involves all kinds of things. It's not just space and structure and light, but it's more about emotion and really about feeling. And so because I work on houses a lot, I want them to be places that are just wonderful to be in. Given a house that had this kind of scale, it had kind of three parts: the north end, the south end, and the middle. And the middle, which is what we see behind us, is really kind of where the most fun was, because the way the spaces came together, the two living rooms, the existing fireplace wall, the far fireplace wall, and the front door, there needed to be somewhere to tie those things together. And somehow this idea of these stone boxes came to be just a way to make everything work out. The idea that these materials, this natural material, kind of does the work of being beautiful. And then I made these boxes. The idea was that the tops are continuous ribbons of stone that drop down to become the ends. But the fronts, you see the slabs. So you understand how the material, you understand the material and how the boxes are put together. And just because of the scale of the boxes, they're not skinny. It's a big space. It needed a big move. But somehow those three boxes, they seem to organize kind of the whole middle of the house. And that to me was like the main thing to do, the most important thing to do. Because I opened up the house, but it still needed a way to make sense as individual spaces. I think the biggest challenge that I faced, I alluded to it earlier, is the idea that the house just seemed to go on and on with no real organization. And so given that we had a house that was actually pretty well built, well constructed, and the outside made a lot of sense in terms of what the roofs did and things, I didn't want to touch the outside envelope. It was a good thing to keep. And so then it was a question of, well, how do we make these rooms fit? And so that's where the idea of the push and the pull, what do I take out, what do I put back in, how do I open things up with still maintaining some function? You know, the bedrooms, the kids' bedrooms are on one end, the parents on the other, the public spaces in the middle. All that stuff was kind of there before, but now it's understandable. One of the big things I did was to kind of make this long, big space in the middle that almost goes from one end of the house to the other. The house is 200 feet long. The view from the back door to the parents' room is 150 feet. But because of that continuity, you always kind of know where you are in the house. And that was a big thing in terms of, like I said, being comfortable with the house making sense. It's like, yeah, these spaces, I know what's going on here. Before, you didn't know what was going on in the house. You didn't know where you were. Now it's like, oh, I get it. I'm in the TV room, I'm in the breakfast room, I'm in the kitchen, I'm in the living room. It's like, I know where I am. And to me, that's an important part of being home, the idea of the shelter and the comfort that you need in a house. One of the interesting things about sustainability is that people want to do all kinds of bells and whistles to achieve sustainability. Just by reusing an existing house, we're doing a massively green thing. Yes, we did put in new windows, and we put in new air conditioning systems. So we upgraded all those things that are big consumers of energy or are determinant of how much heat load you have. But just the idea that we didn't tear the house down and start over, that's a big check mark in my mind. I wouldn't say we didn't do anything particularly sustainable. I mean, yes, we added foam insulation where we didn't have before because we tore off all the sheetrock and we could spray the roof deck. So there's things that we did like that, but it wasn't like we put photovoltaics on the roof or did anything like that. Again, just the idea that we're trying to keep what we have and be smart about it. I think there's plenty of benefit there in my mind. You know, thinking about the project, there wasn't really anything sort of unexpected, except that everything was just old. And you buy a house, it's 40 years old. You think, oh, I can still use that. I can still use that. But it's like when you get into it, it's like, no, everything is just every bathroom, every light fixture. I mean, everything's new, right? So we kept the structure, we kept the exterior, kept the roof, but pretty much everything inside that building envelope is new. And I think that was the biggest thing that was sort of, yes, we didn't want to build a whole new house. We didn't want to do a whole new inside, but in the end, you start pulling this thread on that sweater and it's like, well, yeah, we should just do this now. We should, new windows, let's just do it. We got to do it. You know, now's the time. So the biggest surprise was really just the whole house, just the client willing to redo all this stuff. It was a big endeavor. These clients were great, but they weren't the only clients I've had who've been this receptive to good design. Interestingly, most of my clients that value design are not Americans. They're from Mexico or from England, from South Africa. They bring a different sensibility to what a house should be. I have plenty of great American clients, don't get me wrong, but that's just something that's been kind of curious. I think I mentioned earlier the idea that you need a good contractor and a good client and a good architect to have a good project. Because all of those people have to be on the same page. They actually need to be generous with their money, of course, and with their time, with their energy. There's so many things going on. It's hard to see that yes, there's value in what we're doing for the long term. And that's why these particular clients, they were great. They kept pushing me to do it better, to make it more resolved, make it more clean, make it more finished. So it was a very enjoyable process. These things do take time, but if you're gonna live in a house for maybe decades even, it's definitely worth the investment.